What's going on, Black Baseball Mixtape family in the booth? Flobo Boyce is in the building. We're talking with those individuals who put their own spin on the beautiful game that we love. And well, everyone's been in my DMs the past year and a half. Yo, have you seen this guy? Have you seen what a guy can do and make us feel that much better about our local team, the New York Mets? And I said, well, I've been following the brother forever. And now he's going to be on the show. Please welcome Jordan Simpson. How's it going, sir? This is actually my first episode on the spinoff show. So thank you much for being my first guest here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I'm doing well.
Look, man, Long Island living. Talk to me, man. What's the game like that today? Like, what's the vibe like?
It's chilling. I feel like the weather's hasn't been, anything to brag about. I think it's been kind of like 50. It's been like 45, pushing 50 the past couple of days, but it's been cold, some rain. We had like 9 straight days of clouds and no sun. So then sun finally came out on Saturday. So, but besides that, everything's going well. Keeping
Are
busy,
are,
so all good.
are you a winter person or are you like a summertime person or?
See, I'm really not so. I mean, my favorite season overall is fall. It's just that kind of that in between part. But like, I enjoy each season. It's just when it kind of drags out. Like I was talking to somebody last week. I was like, listen, I like the cold, but like past New Year's, it's like I'm ready for it to kind of warm up a little bit. Like there's kind of just that personal, like okay, I'm ready for it to kind of just advance. You experience the season,
Yeah,
onto the next one, and you kind of enjoy it. But
yep.
yeah,
It's
I
funny you
like
say that
the
because me
warm.
too.
Yeah, it's like you enjoy it, but you only take so much. So
Yeah, no, I hear you.
all
I mean,
good,
fall in the city is a different vibe. And I
a
grew up in
hundred
Brooklyn on
percent.
the Flatland side, near
Yep.
like Kings Plaza and off the belt. And once the leaves would come down and we would like go to the park and play a couple rounds of like 3 second hole football. It was kind of like a whole different scene. You know.
Right. Yeah.
So let's talk about baseball, man. Like, are you a lifetime fan? Did you get dragged into it, man? What was the first time you remember being like, okay, this is my games. I love following the sport.
Yeah. So I started playing baseball in 2006. That's when I first started playing, and then I watched more because I played it, so I understood a bit more. But then, really, 2007 was when I first became like a fan because there's the Mets and the Yankees, and I was like, okay, I gotta choose one. And it was it's honestly the thing that made me choose what team. I just turned on the TV one day and there was a Mets game on. I was like, okay, that's my team, and that just
Okay.
stuck. But it was
Wait,
really
hold
my
on. So
decision.
you're playing baseball, and tell me the position,
Yep,
by the way. And you just decided at this is the day I'm going to decide. Not two games out of three, not a certain day. You just said this is the team. I'm picking the Mets. That's it.
it was just between the Mets and the Yankees because like I watched a lot of baseball. But then I kind of, because a lot of my friends were like, Mets, no, Yankees are better, 27 rings. And I was like, guys, okay, this is getting very hostile and we're like 8 years old. But like, I was like, let me just figure out which one, is my team to just kind of pick and just choose. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to choose the Mets because that was the first thing I saw on TV when I wanted to make that choice. And I was like, yep, that's it.
Yeah.
And then the rest is history.
Okay, that's surreal. For me, it was kind of like my dad played both games because they're immigrants. They're from the West Indies, and I chose the Mets just because there were people that looked like me. Like there were brown people and there were minorities. That was the reason why I
Sure.
chose. But I can imagine just deciding a day like that, like saying that's my team. That's
Yep.
crazy.
It stuck.
Yeah, I mean for better or worse, right? Like that's so
Sure.
I always tell
Exactly.
people if a franchise has two championships and one's literally called the Miracle, like come on, you know.
Yeah, totally
Uh,
fair.
what did you play and how long would you play baseball for?
I played until I was a senior in high school. I played everywhere. I for a while my main position was first base, but then I kind of not graduated, but I kind of like went more into playing more second and then playing some outfield because like I can run pretty well. So I was kind of just put out there so I can just track down fly balls and kind of just get the range and whatnot. But I played everywhere. It wasn't like I was like, hey coach, where do you want me? He's like first base. Like actually, you know what? Second base. I'm like, all right, I'm ready. Like I just wanted to play. So
Yeah.
not catcher though. That was the one position I didn't like playing. But
Yeah.
besides that, I was good.
And so we'll probably get some more of that just a little bit. But since you also did the music thing, like what was that balance like between the course load, playing sports, and learning music at the same time? Did you sleep at all? Like how'd you balance those
Honestly,
plays?
yeah, it's crazy when I look back because like I realized how much I really did everything because it was like playing baseball, but then like at a certain point I was playing baseball, and then music never stopped. Like music was all year round. But then after baseball season was over, had maybe about a month, and in high school I did fencing. So I had baseball maybe about a month, and then fencing, which fencing was like after school almost every day besides Sunday. So it was every day after school,
Mhm.
practicing, training, and all that stuff. I would have rehearsals after that. So I have days where it was okay, going to school at 7 a.m., staying at school till 6. Then you have a gig, so you have to go from there to practice to someplace else, be there at 6:30. And it was just like a nonstop thing. Uh, but it was crazy. But I think honestly, it gets one of those things that hindsight, like I'm kind of proud that I pulled it off as long as I did because I
Yeah.
realized how easy it was for me to kind of burn out, but I think also just doing different things in general because my rehearsals were different. It was like jazz band, a cappella, different, pop things, gospel things. It was everything. So my interests were like not the same. It wasn't the same thing over and over and over again, which is great and refreshing. But from a workload, I was like, why am I so tired? Oh, I understand why. Because I haven't slept like a solid night in like 2 months. But
Right.
yeah,
Does that
yeah.
translate today? Do you still like balance those plays? Are you good at like doing the time management thing, or is it like, oh man, I was a past tense. I don't do that anymore.
I mean, it's not, at least I'm not as active with playing sports and whatnot, but I still, there are moments and times where it's like really kind of just like, doing one thing, then on to the next, and doing the next thing, and then trying to map. Because I'm such a planner, so I really try to map things out in terms of like time and like slotting out a certain time to do this and then do that, and then have a rehearsal. So when I'm going to practice for that, and then working on this song, and I have to email this person back. So there's like a lot of things going on at one time, but it's just a matter of really just mapping it out and being just intentional for sure.
This is totally a side question, and if
You're
I'm being
good.
dumb, please let me know this. Well, I'm a certain age, and when I was a kid, the only person that really was like someone you wanted to be with a sword was like Raphael from Soul Calibur. So how'd you get into fencing? What made you go like, you know what? I'm gonna try this. Like I'm gonna try this like real technical sport.
Yeah, so my sister did it for a little bit because her friend, our family friends, they did it because they're a little bit older, but they did it for a little bit. Then my sister tried it, she liked it, and then I kind of just got pulled into it. But I realized because for me, when I was playing baseball a lot, my off seasons, like we would do, because my travel team would do off season workouts in January, but between like November and December, like, I wasn't really doing much of anything. But then I realized the difference, like physically, of just doing that training on the off season, like November, December, January. It was like next level. Like there were times where the football coach was like, "Guys, we don't even train our guys that hard," because it was
Right.
like the cardio, it was like the push-ups, the planks, the squats, the lunges, and like all that stuff. Like you don't realize how physically demanding it is until you kind of sit back and like look and like, "Whoa, that was a lot of work that we did," and all that stuff. But yeah, that's really how I kind of got pulled into it. But I enjoyed it. It was fun.
That's what's up, man. Well, what
Yeah.
was downtime like? Did you have the video game crew? Were you into anime? Or was you just like into the studies? Like, what was the vibe when you didn't have to be anywhere?
And I mean, when then
Yeah.
it was more of like, if I'm not doing anything, I would either watch baseball games if they were on, or practice, maybe even like force myself to rest. But if I had school, like that was like another thing too, especially when I was a junior, where that's like college decision time and applications. So it was like a nonstop thing where the downtime that I had, it was like, oh, wait, I have to apply. Wait, I have to like map this out. Wait, I have to decide what schools I have to do this audition, that audition, and all that stuff. But I feel like now any downtime I have is either just like writing stuff or even just like simply watching baseball videos. Like I do that all the time.
Yeah. Like, are
Yeah.
you like into the stat kind of thing? It's more performances, storylines. Like, what's the kind of like angle that you consume your baseball content?
It's really everything. I think a big thing, it's been like, I would call it a phase, but it's been like the past a couple of years. Like I'm obsessed with pitching mechanics, like
Mhm.
watching, studying different pitchers, uh, how guys generate their velocity, how guys are durable, and all that stuff. I find it so fascinating. And there are a lot of things, even when it comes to pitching, that kind of translates to me musically, of how when you're efficient with your mechanics and your approach, how much easier things can become when you're more effective and diligent and not trying to do too much. Because when you try to do too much, you get tense and then you can get hurt and all that stuff. But between like studying pitching mechanics, learning about I am obsessed with baseball bats too. Like it's a
Mhm.
weird fascination, but like the bat models, the companies, who swings what, and all that stuff. But Like I just love like the numbers and like the nitty gritty kind of stuff for sure.
Absolutely. So, do you get a chance to go out there and testing on your own? Like, you get a couple like samples and say, "Look, I'm just going to the cages," or it's kind of just like watching the breakdowns online. Like, how do you do with the equipment side of things?
All that. I watch breakdowns. I do have some memorabilia too, which are different like models of different bats. So I have like a Michael Conforto bat game used. I have a Mark Hanna game model bat, a Jeff McNeil game model bat, just to feel like it's their bat and it's cool, but like
Right.
just to get a feel also for like their bat, the size, the weight distribution, the model, like all of that stuff is so fascinating to me.
It is kind of interesting because you're like Jeff McNeil's a novelist bat, right? That's not
Exactly.
say it's like super rare. Like no one
Of
does that
course.
anymore, or
Yeah.
like batting without gloves, right? Yeah, it's funny that I was trying to get that a little bit myself, so it's kind of interesting to see how you got into it, and I love
Yeah.
the relationship between the mechanics and stuff, but versus like the raw talent, power, pitching, and all that.
Sure.
Um, pitchers are throwing harder, and there's always like interesting about like the DH is now universal and have more of a specialized role. Kind of
Yeah.
a sidebar there, but are you a fan of that? Like the fact that both leagues are now have universal DH, or do you like the old school way of the managerial choices with the no DH in the National League?
To be honest, I feel like coming from more of a pure Mets perspective, I loved it just because it fit them so well. You would have thought, but of course it didn't work out that way. But I feel like thinking of it, I enjoyed the thought process of okay, if there's a pitcher here and he's at 94 pitches, but now he's coming up in a big spot. Are they going to pull him out? Or are they going to do what? Or are they going to bunt him and all that stuff? Like that part, I think you definitely do miss. But I think from a pure baseball like, entertainment perspective, if you have an extra bat there, I feel like it kind of adds a whole other element, especially when that's your team too. Like you don't want
Word.
your pitcher coming up in a big spot. You want to have somebody that's more competent. You know.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. It was kind of funny when like we would say, "Oh man, Jake DeGrom has to be his own run support, waka waka waka," but
Yeah.
you still want to win some games. So I'm all
Right.
with that. The new rules last year, pro against. I personally, I'm all for them except for the Ghost Runner. But I know last year we
Hmm.
had the new rules with the bigger bases and the pitch outs and all that. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm more of like at first when you look at them, it's like okay, but then you kind of just or for me at least, I was like, let me be patient. I want to just see how it actually plays out because it's easy to say, yeah, the pitch clocks didn't get in the way in a big game, but then you kind of forgot that the clock was there by August. So it kind of like at a certain point you're just over it. But I think from the pace of play kind of side of things, it made a huge difference because just going to games in general, to get out of City Field on average by like 9:30, 9:40 is better than 10, 15, 10, 20 getting out of
Mhm.
the parking lot. Like it's just a huge difference. And from a fan experience perspective, like it's faster, you have to be more locked in, but it wasn't bad. Like when you're locked into it, you're just locked into it.
Yeah.
Uh Bigger bases, like you don't I mean I noticed it, but not like to an extreme where it was like, oh my gosh, they're too big. But like you kind of just see the impact that it has on the game or more stolen bases and what it can do. I'm more of like if they add a change, let's just see how it plays out before I make a conclusion. But like I'm all for it if it's a change that's going to help. By all means, I don't want to make changes for the sake of just making changes. But if something works, then it works, which I think the pace of play definitely did.
Yeah. I think there were some games that was like 2 hours and 5 minutes and stuff. And like, oh man,
Yeah,
I just sat
yeah,
down.
yeah. So if you go to the bathroom, you're gonna miss like a whole two innings. Honestly,
Right.
it's crazy.
My older brother isn't a sports guy at all. And I'm trying to
Okay.
get him to be a Mets fan because I think there's only a few people in New York who are unclaimed. So I
Yeah.
took him
Okay.
to City Field last summer, and that game
Yeah.
was like 2 hours and 10 minutes. So the time he got his chopped cheese, it was like the seventh. It was like,
Oh man,
well, we're,
that is
we're
that.
good to go. So let's take a step back. The music thing. We know it's something that's very interesting on its own, but you decided to meld that with your love of baseball, and now it almost seems like that's what you're most known for. But talk about the first time you decided to go, man, this is a crazy concept. What am I doing? Someone should stop me. No one's stopping me. I'm mixing Mets fandom with music.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I thought about just trying to figure out what I could do creatively because I got to a point like last year or around this time even I was okay, like I want to do more I love baseball so much, and I want to be able to do something within that community. But there's so many other things going on that are very, you know, it just becomes very crowded at a certain point with like content creation and whatnot. So how can I do something that's different? And then knowing how doing like music content is very different in like the sports world in baseball. And I thought about it for a while and I kind of put it aside, and then I did one video where it was the Mets opening day or the SNY theme for Mets games, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, okay, I think we're on to something here, and that
Yeah.
took off, and then a few other things have taken off, and just to see the responses and the support, I was like, okay, now I think this is it for sure. But it's definitely great to be able to combine both things because it's fun, because it's they tend to be two different worlds in general, but to be able to make them one is just such a blast.
It is interesting for two reasons. One, I have the MLB package here in Los Angeles to watch the Mets out of market,
Mm-hmm.
and so many teams share themes. So many teams have a very generic package, but SNY really does stand out. I mean, Gary Keith
Yeah,
Ron's are one thing, but sonically, it
true.
has a different presentation altogether. So the fact that remixed that was amazing. But ultimately, the relationship between music and baseball. I mean, Take Me Out to the Ball Game was has a whole different display at the National Baseball Museum because how that close relationship between music and the sport. So that song comes out. I guess the request came flooding in, or you said you were on to something. What was like the different variety of different projects you were doing? What was the point where the momentum started to pick up a bit?
Yeah, so that was a big one, and it was fun because it happened so fast. But then there was a moment where because SNY saw it and then they put it on Sports Night, so I was like, okay, this is awesome. And the next morning I was like, wait, but what's next? Like I have to
Right.
keep on because now there are a bunch of people following me at one time. What do I do? Because I don't want this to be a one-off. Now that I'm on this like golden opportunity where people are now interested in to see what I'm doing, so I tried to come up with different ideas. I did like a funky version of Meet the Mets that I released later on. But then trying to figure out, okay, what do I do? What can I try to? I tried, a bunch of different things, trial and error, just to see what people latched onto, what they didn't. And then later on in the year, when I was doing the recaps, I did series recaps within like a minute, like when the Mets were out of the picture, and fans weren't watching actively, but they still like the team enough to be like, I want to know what happened, but I just don't want to spend a few hours a night watching them if they're not playing meaningful baseball. And so I did those, and people were like, okay, now I love this because now I don't feel out of the loop. Where if I go on vacation, if I'm at a wedding and I miss a couple of games, that like I still get the information, where I don't have to sit back, watch the game logs, and watch all the highlights. I can just get everything within a minute and be right there. But I don't know if that answers the question, but it was just more of kind of figuring out what people latched onto, and I think between that and making the jingles also too with the Jingle Man, I think those are the things that definitely took off the most.
So, like I said in the top of my intro, that yeah, I used to get DMs all the time because I'm a long suffering fan. I remember going to school after 2000 and 2015, like, or I wasn't working at the time. We get the idea, and so
Yeah,
I'll get your content. This is just a personal like anecdote. I will get your content every couple of weeks. Yo, your team is trash, Steve. This guy, you know what I mean? Like at least someone's trying out there. And I
right.
always say that the thing about being a fan of the Mets is that we always care, no matter how bad the team are. We do care. There are some
100%.
franchises where people will go, whatever. But what earned the follow from me, I think it was late last season, where you played a note for every hit the opponent got, and then play all
Oh,
the notes the Mets got. And it was like
yeah, oh
one, like
gosh.
eight hits of 200, and I was like, follow. I gotta follow.
Yeah, that was the
That
the
to me was
Braves
awesome.
doubleheader. That was when they
Yep.
won the first game like 20 something, and I was at that game too. So
Oh
that whole
no.
day, I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
like, this
yeah.
is torture. But like I
Right.
couldn't. It wasn't. It was a lost cause at that point. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna enjoy my time here at City Field because we're not winning today at all. But it's one of those days. Yeah,
Right. So you
that was
don't
tough.
leave. You say final out. You're always a final out person.
Always the final out. Always the final out. Yeah. Unless I have to leave by a certain point, I'm there till the final out.
Yeah, I mean, it takes so much to park the car nowadays. Why not?
Yeah.
But I mean, that's what I'm saying. Finding the different kinds of content because you don't want to be well, you don't want to run out of ideas for sure, but definitely you don't want to
Right.
hit the same note every single time, no pun intended. So I would like the fact you get to play around with that. Over the offseason, this offseason has been pretty conservative, and that's putting it lightly. As a GM nerd, I think David Stearns have done pretty much a good job, but nothing's very sexy. But I love the fact that you have almost a song for every signee, as if they are Yoshinobu Yamamoto, as if they are Shohei Otani. Talk to me about that. Like you have a player like Sean Manai, someone who's good, but like okay, but you decided to make a whole song about them to make sure they can like have some hype around it.
Yeah, so it's always fun because I think for me as a fan, when there's especially a slow off season like this one, when there's not much happening, any news that you get, you want to just jump to. But it's fun doing those with the Jingle Man too. Shout out him. But
Mm-hmm.
he and I we do those things together. It's just a blast because I think for us it's not even so much of like celebrating or saying this guy's the best player since whoever, but it's more of like, hey guys, listen, he's on our team now. Let's support him. It's kind of just more of that mindset of like he's one of us now, and let's just be happy because I think the thing with Stearns too is that he's very intentional with the additions that he makes, and just in general, he's always like every spot on the 40-man roster is valuable. You can't just take one for granted. Like you have to fill it out up, from 1 to 40 with quality. And so in my head, I'm like, well, he sees something in all these players to go after them, and there's talent that's there, and for us, and to be able to make those songs, you'll see occasionally people are like, guys, he had like a 70 ERA. I'm like, that's not the point. The point is that he's a Met, and if you want him to succeed, he probably, you don't want him to have 70 ERA when he's with us, but at a
Sure.
certain point, it's kind of like David Stearns is the guy in charge. We're
Mm-hmm.
not. He's smarter. It's like it's his decision. That's his job. So let him do that. And I think, given everything, like yes, it's in relation to the past couple of off seasons, it's underwhelming, but they're in a different spot. I feel like than they have been because like now, past couple of years, you didn't have the depth to come up if
Agreed.
something were to happen. Now, okay, if somebody gets, like if Marte gets hurt, God forbid, you still have Drew Gilbert, who's a top prospect, who's ready to go. You have Jet Williams, Acuna, not Acuna Jr., but
Who
who is
sound
now
how?
Acuna, where it's like you have guys that are knocking on the door, being ready to like, hey, if something happens at some point this year, they can make an impact, which we've never had. Even from a pitching side of things, you still have that internal depth of, hey, something happens. McGill may not be in the rotation, but you have somebody who's better than what we've had in the past, or prospects that are knocking on the door as well.
Yeah.
But I think going back to the songs, it's like, hey, listen, like they're one of us now. Let's just support them. Let's give them the energy, and also to get some of the you had some responses from some of those players too, which has definitely been a blast for sure.
Where do you refill your fandom cup? Because the comments are terrible. WFAN can be really disheartening. Like, where do you go?
Yeah,
Where do you get that positivity? To be like, hey, man, you know what? We're trying. Like, must be pretty hard.
I feel like I mean at a certain point you have to just tune certain stuff out because it's at a certain point fans will be fans, and I think there's passion 100%, and like we're all passionate, but I think it's how you channel it, and I think we become very much of like the instant gratification. If things don't go well, then they're not going to go well at all. But I mean, if we watch baseball, we know. I mean, Mets fans know firsthand that like what happens in April doesn't mean anything when you get to September because that in 22 we were atop the division in June, up by 10 games, and we lost the division. So it's kind of trusting the whole entire process, understanding that hey, there are going to be ups and downs, but nothing's like linear. It's not going to be like, up the whole entire way. Even with like the Dodgers, like they've are up the whole entire year, and they get eliminated the first round. So
Mm-hmm.
you just never know with baseball. But I think for me, my mentality is more of just like I love this team, so like I understand that what's happening while a lot of it you can react to what you see on the headline. A lot of it's also kind of like let's just take a step back and analyze like what's going on, and not to just react to a clickbait headline that all of a sudden gets people to react. And it's like, guys, if you read the article, that's not what it says. He's saying
Right.
this, but you're just jumping to what it says in the headline or the picture that's involved. Uh, but that's just kind of more my personality too. Like I'm not like a reactionary, like, oh great, here we go again. It's more like that sucks, but okay, let's just look at the bigger picture kind of thing.
Yeah, we're a dying breed. I tell you that. And then to the whole thing, to your point, that the Tommy Pham article from the Athletic was the
Oh
best
yeah,
thing for me, where it was like, no, in context, it makes sense, but the pull
right,
quote was like, "Brr," you know what I mean? Shout out to Tommy Pham
exactly.
for the show. So I can say that I'm a fan of yours, but what's the greatest thing a fan has ever given or done for you? Someone that says, "Hey, look, you made my day," or anything like that. It's just, does a fan ever come forward and say, "Man, I'm a big fan of your content. Here's how it affected my life."
Yeah, it's always surreal when it happens, especially when you're at Mets games and like people come up to you because it's happened where I've had a kid who was like maybe like 12 come up to me and said that he enjoyed what I did, and then same day you have somebody who's like an older gentleman who's coming up to me, and you have like a bunch of different people of different age groups and backgrounds, and even it's cool when you have different people that as a Mets fan being on Mets Twitter, these personalities and all these people, but then they reach out to you. It's like, wow, like I'm a fan of yours, but like now it's cool to have them come up and say, yo, I'm a fan of you. And Darren from the Seven Line, he's like, yo, I'm a fan of yours, and like, he shouted me out a bunch. But like
Mhm.
growing up a Mets fan, you know who he is, and so for him to be like, yo, I love what you do, I get things like that uh, mean a lot. And even just doing like these videos for fun, even when you have like Sean Mania who loved you, was like, yo, I appreciate that, thank you. Or Adam Montevino, like the one that we did for him. So it was a lot of that stuff. There are a lot of moments where it's rewarding because you don't do it to get that reaction, but when you get that
Sure.
reaction, you're like, wow, like that feels special.
Yeah, yeah, man. The Seven Line gave it a shout out. That's what's up, man. Because
Yeah,
they were the original beacon in the darkness
sure.
when
Yep.
that organization was founded. It was the nadir, man, of Mets fandom. So that's what's
Yeah.
up. I've been recognized twice myself because the last season I was trying to go to different ballparks, but I had just did the MLB Now commercial, MLB Play commercial, so
Right.
my face was on all over ESPN. Download the app today, brother. And I always laugh at that because I did that commercial as a fluke. I needed the money. They were
Sure.
looking for baseball comedians. I did it. But then when I was in Denver and someone said, "Hey, you're that guy," and I was like, "What guy?" Like, "Oh, you're the app guy. I see you more than my wife." And it was the whole joke was like, "Yo, I'm between innings. I'm getting my snacks and food. Your voice is in the house." And granted, it's a commercial, so the half life is like what, 4 months. But I
Sure.
thought it was pretty cool that you could impact something like that, and it was very
Right.
like interesting to see. So I'd imagine getting dapped down by like all the new players. That's pretty awesome, man. That's what's up.
Yeah, it's very special for sure.
But it's not just about baseball though, because I like the fact that you break down how you come across the songs you do. You did one recently for the Christmas song reboot, which I
Oh yeah.
really enjoy. Let's talk about the music outside of baseball. So, is there like a balance within your account to have the non baseball stuff, or you kind of just go whatever's inspiring me today? I'm gonna show the world what I got.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because like at a certain point, I was like, how do I manage both? Because you have like a following at a certain point that originally was from my music, and then you gain more followers that are on the baseball side of things, and so it's like, okay, well, which one? Like, how do I manage and balance both? But then at least from my perspective, it's like even the stuff that's baseball related, there's still the musical element to it. So it's not like it's like either music or it's like stats and just stats kind of stuff. It's like music consistently. It's just a matter of uh, which avenue, or like, is it music, or is it Mets? But I try to keep it both. Try to keep it, especially on Instagram, because I feel like TikTok too, I guess to an extent. But I think Twitter is like all baseball people, but for
Sure.
Instagram, it's definitely a mix. We have musicians too who aren't sports fans that I still keep in touch with. Like, yo, I love what you do, and they don't even know who Koda Senga is. So it's like it is what it is. But it's all good stuff.
But they will. I think
Yeah,
the through line is that the music is still sound. No pun intended. Like it wasn't
sure.
like you're just like hitting random notes, being like aha. But I think even if you don't know the subject matter, you can go, oh, that's a banger. I
Right.
grew up in the '90s where hip hop was everywhere. The heyday of Hot 97, and
Uh
back
huh.
then it was Kiss FM. But then I went to Florida, Flagler College in Florida for undergrad.
Hmm.
Northern Florida, that was country, that was pop, that was rock. And the first 3 months, I was like, I don't get this, man. This is not my musical language. But then you hear about melodies and riffs and chords, and you're like, okay, that sounds hot. That piece sounds hot. And then over time, it kind of like it expands your horizon. So I like the fact that I can come in and watch how you craft songs, maybe even not ones with subject matters I'm familiar with, and I go, oh my gosh, it still checks out. It's pretty dope.
Right.
I'd like to ask you about pursuing JC, if you allow me, man. That's pretty cool that you're
Sure.
able to bring your talent to another group in another space. Tell me more about that in the faith-based music.
Yeah. So they're a family essentially, but I've been with them for going on, gosh, about 9 years now. That's actually crazy to think about. Um, but yeah, so it's funny because I met them at a gig that I was doing with a few friends of mine, and their bassist was leaving, and like, hey, I need a bassist, or they needed a bassist, and so their dad or the manager of the group, he was like, hey, is your son available? To my mom. This was like him emailing my mom, saying, hey, is your son interested in playing bass for us? And she's like, oh yeah, sure. Who is this, by the way? So, oh yeah, by the way, this is from Pursuing JC. He kind of just sent like a cold email, like, "Hey, is your son interested in playing bass with us?" And there was like no subject matter whatsoever. But it's a funny story.
Approved,
But
yeah.
of course, but no, it was great. I think just being with them, and they become some of my best friends, and uh, I think it's great to be able to be with them. I mean, from what we've been able to do, it's kind of like in my head, just like your typical ground up approach in the sense that we've traveled like when we first were, when I first joined, we would travel like 4 or 5 hours on a van to play for like 30 kids, or we drove down to Virginia like 8 hours to play for like 13 people, and like five of which were our parents. So it's kind of like you did like those kind of things to then years later doing festivals with like 3 to 5 thousand people, or to go out and have prominent artists like say, oh, I remember pursuing JC, or just to kind of be in that realm of like being like when you like make it, because I think like in the like in like the Christian music world, it's not as like big, sure, as like the mainstream. But when you're doing the events that we do, like we've done some with some of like the top people within the industry, and so to work with them and to interact with them, is surely a blessing. And we went to Guatemala actually this past summer, which was, well, yeah, there's like that's that was a crazy experience for sure. Because just to be able to do like to travel hours to play for like 15 to 20 people,
Yeah.
to flying to Guatemala and doing a tour there, it was
Yeah.
definitely insane for sure.
That must have been a crazy day getting that call. Like, we're going where now? Like,
Yeah, I mean, honestly,
yeah.
within the band, the kind of just the way it kind of rolls is like the dad who runs it all. He's very unassuming a lot of the time, so he'll just say something offhand, and it takes you a second to process what he just said. So he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, we're gonna go on. I think next summer we'll probably go to Guatemala." And like, wait, you said that as if we're gonna go to like maybe one after rehearsal or something, but you said no, we're gonna go to Guatemala and over the summer. It's like, oh, he
Yeah.
does that, yeah. But it was a special opportunity for sure. Just I think when you're there because of Guatemala, just it's a beautiful area. But when you see
Hmm.
kind of just how fortunate, in perspective, how fortunate we are, and to see how gracious and appreciative that they were and the kids were, especially down there, because we went to a couple of orphanages, and so you had kids who don't know how long they're going to be in an orphanage, but you see like I just appreciate just to see them like dance and to sing along to you playing. It's like whoa,
Yeah.
that's like a whole other perspective of like my circumstances are terrible, and we all have tough circumstances for sure. But it's like for them, when it's like they don't know when they're gonna get out of there, but to still express joy and to be gracious and kind and loving was definitely a great experience for sure.
I mean, I was going to ask, man, when you play in front of 13 or 10 people, what could possibly motivate you to keep going? But then you hear stories like that. It's pretty awesome that you're able to impact the world with what the talents you have. You know,
Sure.
that's awesome, man. What's next for the Pursuing JC? Is like a whole new tour lined up or a new album coming up? Like, what's the
We're still
2024
doing a lot of
outlook?
writing. Yeah, we do a lot of writing for sure. I think because of how things are now, because we all grew up together for the most part, but now when you have a few of us who are either in college or doing their own thing, and a few of them, like I know a few are still in college. One of them is working in Nashville, or two, three of them actually are in Nashville right now. So there's like a few in Nashville and then a few up here, the rest of us up here. So it's kind of like a collaborative, like going back and forth type deal. But opportunities always tend to come up. It's just a matter of when we're all available, which is good to be a group where we're asked about a lot to
Yeah.
do events and whatnot.
So this question is pretty much for any kind of flavor, whether it is with Mr. GC or your solo stuff or with the Mets. What is the bucket list for potential venues or shows? You have that like vision board of where you would like to play in the future, or is it kind of like take it per track, take it per song, take it per month?
I mean, I'm very much both ways. I'm very much like, yes, I have a lot of goals and things that I want to do, but I'm also like more of like one thing at a time, or kind of just being more in the moment. Because I think each thing that you do, there is like a unique experience with that one thing. So trying to not look past that, to look past the journey to get to the destination. When the destination, you'll appreciate more when you kind of embrace the journey that you're on. Um, but I think for me, I mean, there are a lot of places, even like out here, like just seeing, I mean, Long Island, there's like the Paramount, there's, UBS now, there's Nassau Coliseum, which I used to ice skate actually. That's a random fact. I used to figure skate a lot, so I used to figure skate
Oh
at
wow.
Nassau Coliseum a little bit.
Oh.
Um, but yeah, I mean, MSG obviously is for everyone, but wherever, wherever the Lord takes me for sure.
I like how you pick the sports that have like the most balance required, like fencing and figure skating. I'll just fall all
Yeah.
over the time. That's
Yeah.
crazy, man. Is there any sports we're missing? Did you play lacrosse too? 'Cause I know a lot of
Nope.
in Long Island. It's like almost like a second sport people play.
Yeah, no, I didn't play. I mean, I played soccer when I was a kid, but everybody does. But then I
Right.
played a little bit of basketball, but it was mainly just baseball and then some fencing
Yeah, I
and
would say
figure
play
skating.
basketball, but that's a very loose definition of play. I mean, I was on the court. I didn't really
I know
do
how to
it.
play basketball, but if you're asking me, hey, we're playing 5 on 5, I'll be a
Yeah.
ref. Like
Yeah.
I'll, you know,
Yeah. I'm that way
okay.
with chess. I know how to play. I just don't know how to win. So I'm with
See,
you.
I don't even know how to play chess, so you
Uh,
got me there.
I feel all it takes you is a weekend, and then you'll be like a trick. You take things so
Just wait.
fast, man. Like, why not? Add it on.
I don't know, maybe one day, but it's like it's a lot of like what pieces and what each one means and what. Yeah, it's a lot.
Absolutely. I'm gonna send you a chess kit. Don't worry.
Okay,
When I was a kid, I did karate because I wanted to be a Power Ranger. I'm dating myself.
sure.
I did football because I wasn't tall. I was wide. When I was in high school, I was like
There you go.
5'9", 275.
Oh wow.
And I kind of dabbled with softball. And I do that now as an adult, but I would never
Yeah.
call myself athletic. I'm kind of like that guy who is in personal trainer shape. You know what I mean? Like I'm not
Got
like
you.
rip. I'm like an athlete, but I can like run a half mile and
You
not like
can
keel
manage,
over.
right?
Yeah, I
Sure.
can manage. So
Yeah,
props
yeah,
for staying active. Do you still active now? Like, do you still play sports when you have downtime? Do you still like hit the 5-on-5 court?
yeah. I mean, I still keep active a ton. Like I still work out and exercise and whatnot. I'm still one like even on random days, I just want to go outside and I'll just toss the ball up against the wall and just play catch with myself, like just things like that. Or um, I don't know, but like I miss playing sports a lot because I feel like you kind of. I think what you realize what it does is like an outlet of kind of like channeling like any energy or anything that you're kind of just dealing with out into like fencing, for example, where I got like a bad grade on the test. And it's like, well, fence. I was like, bah! And like I was able to like let loose. Um,
Right.
but even like things like, so I know for me when I played baseball, I know there were a couple of times where just there were things between like the kids. And when you're young, there's like a lot of maturity things. But I know like one time in particular, there was like a lot of it was just a weird energy amongst the team towards me. I felt like it was like I don't know what's happening, but I was hurt and I was like, okay, whatever. But
Yeah.
then when I was healed and I was ready to go, my first game back, I was like the most locked in I've ever imagined. I got 2 hits my first 2 at bats, but I didn't say a word. I was like, no, I'm gonna let my actions speak for myself. Like I'm kind of just that kind of person of just being like, I'm gonna take whatever that is and just use it to focus. And then once I do what I do,
Yeah.
that's it. I don't need to like look back at you and like do the Joe Kelly pout or anything like that. But like I always walk away. I'm like, yep, I did that, and that's it.
You raised a good question. Did you have like athletic inspirations, or was your motivations completely internal?
I mean, I did. I mean, I was huge in Andrew McCutcheon. He was a big guy for me, like especially when I was in high school.
Yeah.
But like even Jose Reyes, growing up as a kid, like he was like my first main player of like watching him steal all those bases and hit triples and all of that. But I mean, I still watch highlight videos of random guys. Just I enjoy it, and I still find it still inspiring. Even like I know, and this is kind of a bit of a tangent, but like I take that side of things of like that athleticism when I perform. Like there are clips of me like doing not full splits, but like very close to doing a split and like doing weird contortions and like leaning back and like turning and all that stuff. But it's a lot of for me just being intentional with like keeping up with my body and training and mobility and all that stuff, hydration, stretching, all that to be able to manage. Because when you have tours, when you have like day in, the next day, and then you feel sore the next day, it's like I've gotten to a point where it's like, nope, I feel good. And it's kind of like the same mentality almost when you're like a baseball player, when you're like, hey, I have to play 162 games within like 180 days. How do I manage? And you kind of just build yourself up to be able to do that kind of thing.
Like Lindor says, you post up. you
Post
know,
up. There you go.
uh, I this is kind of a small weird thing, but I thank you for that. I'm a big firm believer in giving everyone the full show. So I was
Hmm.
a professional wrestling ring announcer about 10 years ago. I had a place called Mach 1 Wrestling. I'm a big wrestling nerd. That's my thing. And I used to do ring announce in front of like 6 people, and 3 of them were girlfriends of the other wrestlers. And one day I phoned it in, and the guy who paid me was like, "What are you doing?" It's like there's only 3 people here. He's like, "Stop! You gotta do it." They bought a
Right.
ticket, give them the whole show, and that kind of changed my perspective. The reason I'm bringing this up is that even in the TikTok in your room, you're not doing just like a I'm doing the bass. You're like, no, we're going to add the bass. They're going to add the
Right.
melody. And to me, I appreciate that so much because I can't create the music on the level you do. But
Hmm.
after watching your videos, I'm like, maybe I can. And
Right.
it's so inspiring to see someone just be so passionate about something and being willing to break it down in a way that's accessible. So props for that, man, for sure.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So it was Reyes your favorite Met, by the way? I'm just curious.
I
Of all
mean,
time?
there are a lot of. I get asked that a couple of times. Who's my favorite Met, and I think it
Yeah.
keeps changing. He was my first favorite Met.
Okay.
I feel like. I mean, there are, there are a lot of great Mets. I feel like that you just latched onto. Like obviously David Wright's up there, but like
Yeah.
even now, like you gotta love Pete. You gotta love Lindor. Huge fan of McNeil. Just how he plays, like everything. But
Mhm.
I mean, he's definitely like my first. Like he wanted when I first played. I was my second year or my third year playing. I was on the Mets and I got number 7 out of coincidence. I was like, let's go. And I was like running around the bases. I was playing shortstop and I was living in my element. I was enjoying it.
Absolutely. Right's up there for me. That's the one I'll
Yeah.
fight that out for. If I'm in a room, I don't know anybody, when they ask me, "Hey, buddy, what's your favorite Met?" I say Piazza. It's a nice, safe choice. It's like pizza. No one is going to hate
Right.
pizza, you know. But
Close
I'll be
enough.
honest with you. As a kid, my favorite Met of all time was Benny Agbayani. Because,
Okay.
like me, he was a thick boy. He was bottom heavy. I was like, oh, he looks
Sure.
like me.
Yeah.
So shout out to Benny Agbayani, bro. I think all of his kids play ball too, so that's awesome.
That's great.
So 2024 is either the quickest 5 years or the longest 5 years since the shutdown. If you want to take anyone to interpret it, what's next for you as far as like the bucket list? Talk about the music side, but you as an individual, you as a creative, what do you want to accomplish in the next 6 months, 9 months, 12 months?
Working on a lot of music. I have a like I kind of realized how much music that I actually have, if not completed, like near completed. I'm like, okay, these can't just sit here. Like, I have to do something with it because I have a lot of ideas and just working on following them through, like finishing them and moving on and whatnot. But I'll definitely be releasing a lot more music, a lot more Mets content, and really just trying to get better and better with each thing that I do. Some more collaborations and hopefully do some more performing soon because I do miss being on stage and performing a lot. But yeah, there are a lot of things that I want to do, but I think just I've kind of been more in of like a place of I want to just do like rather than just being like, oh, I should do that. Oh, I'll do that. It's like I'm just gonna do it because if you don't, then it's not gonna happen.
Right. Be intentional. Keep moving forward. I like it, man.
Yeah,
If someone wants to follow you or buy some of your music or learn more about you, how to go about doing that?
yeah. So I'm on Instagram, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, TikTok. At JR Simpson Music is my handle. If you want to find my original music, Jordan Simpson, my name. on all streaming platforms. And yeah, keep up to date. I'll be releasing some stuff soon and working very, very hard. So I'm excited.
Dude, I appreciate you. Black Baseball Mixtape appreciates you. We got to connect next time I'm in town. Maybe catch a game. Maybe get there in time to actually see the game before it ends too quickly. You know what I'm saying?
That's true. It's important. Yeah.
All right, man.